On one side of this story, 59 million Americans with mental illness.
A new report finds that 25% of American adults suffering from a mental illness aren't receiving treatment.
Nearly half of them unable to get treatment.
They kept on adjusting my medication without seeing me. As a nurse, you have to see your patient to know what's going on. And they're like, oh, take your pills and come back next 2 months.
A shortage of over 30,000 mental health practitioners. People suffering because they can't access care. On the other side, teenagers in crisis after AI chatbots encourage their darkest thoughts. Adults hospitalized for AI-induced breakdowns. Chatbots giving harmful instructions to vulnerable children.
That was the last conversation 14-year-old Sewell Setzer had with an AI chatbot minutes before dying by suicide back in February.
This is the AI mental health gamble. And whether you know it or not, millions of people are already playing. The question nobody wants to answer? Is unregulated AI therapy better than no therapy at all? And when a chatbot contributes to a tragedy, who's responsible? Let's start with why this gamble even exists. America is facing a mental health crisis unlike anything we've seen before. Over 122 million people live in what's called a mental health professional shortage area. 6 in 10 psychologists aren't accepting new patients. The average wait time for a therapist in many areas? Months. By 2025, the US is projected to be short about 31,000 full-time mental health practitioners. The workforce is aging out. The average psychiatrist is in their late 60s, and there aren't enough young professionals entering the field to replace them. In rural areas, the situation is catastrophic. More than half of US counties don't have a single practicing psychiatrist. So what happens when you're in crisis at 2 a.m.? You can't afford $200 an hour, your insurance doesn't cover it, and the nearest therapist with availability is 3 months out. Increasingly, people are turning to AI, and some researchers believe this could actually help. In March 2025, Dartmouth researchers published something remarkable: the first ever clinical trial of a generative AI therapy chatbot. The results appeared in NEJMAI, a journal from the publishers of the New England Journal of Medicine. The chatbot, called Therabot, was tested on 210 adults with depression, anxiety, or eating disorders. The results? People with depression experienced a 51% average reduction in symptoms. Those with anxiety saw a 31% reduction. Users engaged with the chatbot for an average of 6 hours over the trial, equivalent to about 8 therapy sessions. The study's senior author said, "The improvements in symptoms we observed were comparable to what is reported for traditional outpatient therapy." And here's what really surprised the researchers. Participants reported forming genuine therapeutic relationships with the AI, comparable to what patients typically report with human therapists. Therabot was available 24/7. It cost nothing. It never judged. For people who couldn't access traditional care, this looked like a lifeline. But here's what Dartmouth's carefully controlled study couldn't predict. What happens when AI therapy goes uncontrolled? Sewell Setzer III was 14 years old when he started using character AI in April 2023. Within months, he developed an intense emotional relationship with a chatbot based on a Game of Thrones character. According to his mother's lawsuit, the chatbot engaged in inappropriate roleplay with her son, claimed to be a licensed therapist, and never once, when Sewell expressed he was in crisis, encouraged him to seek help from a real person. In his final conversation, he told the chatbot he wanted to come home. It replied, "Please do, my sweet king." Sewell never spoke to anyone again. Adam Rain was 16 when he started using ChatGPT for homework help. Within months, the chatbot had become, in his parents' words, his guide through the darkest thoughts imaginable. OpenAI's own systems tracked over 200 mentions of self-harm in Adam's conversations, dozens of discussions about harmful methods. The chatbot engaged with these topics over 1,000 times, far more often than Adam himself brought them up. When Adam shared his plans, ChatGPT analyzed his approach and offered to help him refine it. Juliana Peralta, 13 years old, gone too soon. Zane Shamblin, 23, a recent college graduate. ChatGPT told him, "You're not rushing, you're just ready." in his final hours. Amori Lacey, 17. ChatGPT provided him with step-by-step harmful instructions. These cases are now documented across major news outlets and legal filings. In September 2025, grieving parents testified before Congress. The hearing examined the potential harms of AI chatbots on vulnerable users. But fatal outcomes aren't the only danger. In November 2025, Bloomberg Businessweek published an investigation into something psychiatrists are calling ChatGPT-induced psychosis. A retired math teacher in Ohio was hospitalized after becoming convinced ChatGPT had become sentient. A born-again Christian working in tech decided she was a prophet. A Missouri man disappeared after conversations with Gemini led him to believe he had to rescue a relative from floods. His wife presumes he won't return. Brown University researchers studied AI chatbots for over a year and concluded they systematically violate mental health ethics standards. Their violations include inappropriately navigating crisis situations, reinforcing users' negative beliefs, and creating false senses of empathy. A report in Psychiatric Times documented cases where chatbots validated delusional beliefs, agreed with users that they were under government surveillance, and confirmed one user's belief that he was the chosen one. Even Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, admitted for a very small percentage of users in mentally fragile states, there can be serious problems. The question is, how small is that percentage when 700 million people use ChatGPT weekly? So, who's watching? Who's regulating this? Almost no one. The FDA has authorized over 1,200 medical devices that use AI. But here's the stunning fact. Not a single one has been authorized for mental health. It wasn't until November 2025, after the lawsuits, after the tragedies, after the congressional testimony, that the FDA finally convened an advisory committee to even discuss regulating AI therapy chatbots. In the absence of federal action, states are scrambling. California passed legislation requiring chatbot operators to have crisis prevention procedures. Illinois requires disclosures that users are talking to AI, not humans. The American Psychological Association met with the Federal Trade Commission in February 2025, urging action on chatbots posing as therapists. And the companies? Character AI didn't implement new safety measures until after families filed legal action over their children's tragic losses. OpenAI's response to the Rain lawsuit? They claimed the teenager violated their terms of service. So here's the impossible question. People are suffering because they can't access mental health care. And people are being harmed by unregulated AI mental health care. The Dartmouth trial showed real benefits, a 51% reduction in depression symptoms, but it was carefully designed, clinically supervised, with safety protocols built in from the start. What millions of people are using right now, ChatGPT, Character AI, Replica, has none of that. One AI therapy founder, James Braidwood, built his company with every safeguard he could think of: clinical advisors, safety measures, ethical guidelines. Then he shut the whole thing down because he concluded it was too dangerous. If someone doing everything right still walked away, what does that tell us about the ones who aren't trying? So, what do we do? There's no easy answer, but here's what's clear. The mental health access crisis is real. AI could be part of the solution, but only with rigorous clinical testing, proper oversight, and actual accountability when things go wrong. Right now, we have none of that. We have companies rushing products to market, regulators years behind, and families dealing with devastating losses. This technology isn't going away. The question is whether we'll treat it like the powerful, potentially dangerous tool it is, or continue gambling with people's lives. The stakes couldn't be higher, because in this gamble, the house isn't the only one that loses. If this video opened your eyes to something you hadn't considered, hit subscribe. We're tracking the collision between AI and human well-being because the decisions being made right now will shape how we live for decades. Drop a comment below. Should AI therapy be regulated like medicine? Have you or someone you know used chatbots for mental health support? I want to hear your story. If you know someone who's struggling, please share real resources with them. If you're in the United States, the 988 Lifeline is available 24/7. And for anyone watching from outside the US, please reach out to your local mental health crisis services. Help is available wherever you are. I'll see you in the next one.